Did you know that police are allowed to lie to you, manipulate you, and trick you during an investigation, even if you've done nothing wrong? In the United States, it's not just permitted, it's actually standard practice. From street stops to interrogation rooms, police are legally allowed to use deception to get what they want: your words, your cooperation, your consent, and yes, sometimes a confession to a crime you didn't commit. But what if you knew their playbook? What if you could see 10 steps ahead and already knew what was coming? I'm Jeff Hampton, the People's Lawyer, and in this video we're going to cover the deeply manipulative tactics that cops are allowed to use against you and exactly how you can prepare yourself so you can outsmart them every step of the way. These are real tactics used against real people who found themselves behind bars for crimes they didn't commit. So let's pull back the curtain on each of these tactics, and we're going to start with one that seems deceptively harmless. Number 1, the friendly chat ploy. You're not in trouble, sir. We just need to clear a few things up. Sounds casual, right? That's actually the point. By framing the encounter as just a little conversation, police are avoiding triggering your actual legal defenses. No Miranda rights, no lawyer, no protection. You're probably thinking, yeah, but Jeff, I've done nothing wrong. I should be just fine. But here's the real truth. Even innocent people have been trapped by just a few innocent questions. For example, in the case of Salinas versus Texas, Genovo Salinas voluntarily answered questions about a suspected murder. He paused for just a moment when asked by the investigator if ballistics would match his shotgun. Prosecutors then used his pause, his momentary silence, as evidence of guilt. Why? Because he did not explicitly invoke his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. But the line between chatting with a cop and interrogation, it's razor thin. And the cops immediately cross over that line the moment they start talking about anything criminal. So how do you outsmart the cops if they pull this trick on you? Number 1, don't treat any police conversation as informal. Instead, say, "Officer, I'm happy to speak, but only through my lawyer." Then keep your mouth closed. Number 2, if you're at the police station voluntarily, you can leave. Tell the officer, "Officer, am I free to go?" If he says yes, get up and go and don't hesitate. Which brings us to police tactic number 2, the fake evidence bluff. Now, I hate to tell you, but this one trick breaks more innocent people than any other police tactic. Police, out of nowhere, show up and claim to already have video footage, fingerprint evidence, or maybe they have a witness who has, quote, told us everything. Remember the case of Amanda Knox? She had been told by Italian police officers they had irrefutable evidence she had committed the murder. Under pressure, Amanda began to question her own memory, and she signed a false statement confessing. This fake evidence bluff cost Amanda years in prison before she was exonerated. You say, okay, Jeff, that's in Italy, but what about the US? Well, in the United States, Thomas Perez was told that his father was dead and that he was the one responsible for the murder. But the cops, they just flat out lied. His father was actually still alive, and he ended up signing a confession to a crime that never even took place. Always remember, if the cops already had proof that you have done something wrong, they wouldn't need your confession. So how do we outsmart the cops with this fake evidence bluff? Number 1, always tell the officer, "I will not answer any questions without my attorney present." Number 2, never argue against so-called fake evidence. Let your lawyer do the talking and the investigation later. And then number 3, always remember, refusing to speak to an officer, that's not suspicious. It's actually survival. Which brings us to our next tactic used by the police. Cops might actually want you to remain silent. Growing up, most of us are taught staying quiet is a good thing when the cops show up. The problem, it doesn't always work for you. In the case of Salinas versus Texas, the cops actually used Salinas' silence against him all because he did not verbalize, "I exercise my right to remain silent." So the crazy part here is your silence can actually be used as evidence against you unless you open your mouth and invoke your right to remain silent. But once you say it clearly, "I exercise my right to remain silent," the law kicks in and protects you. Otherwise, you're fully exposed. So how do we outsmart cops here when they want you to actually be silent? Number 1, we say, "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and I demand my right to a lawyer." Number 2, don't say another word even if they leave and return back and try to coerce you into talking again. And then number 3, assume you are always being recorded at all times. So now you know you must exercise your right to remain silent to actually use that right and protect yourself. But what about cops, the good cop, supposedly showing up and now making you false promises? We've all heard of the good cop, bad cop routine, right? The bad cop walks in first and starts demanding information for you, threatening you, saying how it's really going to go bad for you if you don't cooperate. But then the good cop leans in, he offers sympathy, and he might even say something like, "I believe you, man. Listen, I really want to help you. If you'll share a little bit with me, I'll see what I can do to put in a good word upstairs." That's exactly what happened to Adrian Thomas. Investigators showed up, told Adrian that his infant son was still alive, and that if he would confess to his involvement in this crime, that they could still provide help to his son. The problem, his infant son had already died. But of course, the cops, they used his words against him, and then he ended up being convicted of murder. But, and always remember this, cops are never bound by any verbal promises they make to you. So how do you outsmart cops when they make you these promises? Number 1, never mistake empathy for immunity. Number 2, always say, "I demand my attorney be present," and repeat those words as often as you need to. And then number 3, never forget friendly cops are still building a case against you, always. So we've covered how to handle the good cop and their false promises, but watch out for tactic number 5, the bad cop's pressure cooker. Now, bad cops, they love to come at you very aggressive, but watch out here because one misstep can unravel your life. Maybe the cop raises his voice at you. He slams down hard on the table. He makes threats to you or keeps you in isolation. Sound crazy? Well, that's exactly what happened to the Central Park 5. 5 teenagers were interrogated for hours without food or sleep. Eventually, they broke. They confessed. But later, DNA evidence proved they were innocent. These teenage boys were perfect victims for police to pick on because fear tactics only work against people who don't know how to shut them down. So how do we outsmart bad cops when they threaten us? Number 1, stay calm. Lower your voice even if they raise theirs. And number 2, repeat, "I invoke my right to remain silent. I will not answer questions without my attorney present." Finally, number 3, don't resist physically. Just go quiet and wait after you exercise your rights. Just when we thought we've taken care of the good cop and the bad cop, watch out for the "I thought you had nothing to hide" guilt trip. Cops love to use this line. And if you let this line work on you, they don't need to use any other tricks. We've all heard it before. "Come on, man. If you've got nothing to hide, why don't you just answer a few questions?" Brendan Dassey, a teenager with cognitive impairments, was told by the police not that he was a suspect, but that he was just helping with an investigation. He later confessed to a murder when he didn't even realize he was a suspect. So how do we outsmart the cops when they pull this guilt trip on us? Number 1, tell the officer clearly, "I do not waive my rights. I demand my lawyer present before any questioning." Never try to prove your innocence on the spot. That's what the legal system and your attorney are for, to exonerate you when the cops are trying to trick you. Speaking of tricks, watch out when the cops pull the old consent trap. Write this down. "I do not consent to any searches." Text it to your kids. Memorize it yourself when the cops come calling. The officer might just walk up to your car and very politely ask, "Mind if I take a quick look in your car?" Saying yes immediately gives up all of your Fourth Amendment rights. In fact, that's exactly what a Georgia man did when he gave consent for the officers to search his car. He believed there was nothing in his car, but come to find out the passenger had put his vape pen with THC oil in it into the glove box. The officers found it, and the driver found himself actually going to jail. Always remember, if cops already had probable cause, they wouldn't need your consent to search. So how do we outsmart cops when they pull this consent trap on us? Number 1, always say, "I do not consent to any searches." Number 2, if pushed by the cops, always ask, "Am I being detained?" And then number 3, stay polite, but remain firm. Reassert your rights over and over again, and don't agree to any searches or future discussion with the officers. But what if cops now show up at your front door? They bang on your front door saying they've got a warrant. Watch out here for the warrant bluff. One of the most common tricks cops love to pull is to come to your front door and say, if you don't let us in, we'll go get a warrant. But remember, if they had probable cause, why didn't they show up with a warrant to begin with? Which reminds me of the case of Bumper versus North Carolina. Cops showed up at this woman's home, they knocked on her front door, and they said that they had a warrant. She opened the door and they were let inside, but they lied to her and never had a warrant to begin with. The search was later ruled to be illegal by the courts because when the cops bluffed and claimed they had a warrant, that was the same as coercing her to get in the home. Remember, always remember, bluffing about the ability to go get a warrant, that's legal. But claiming to have a warrant and not having an actual warrant on them, that's illegal, and cops will not be able to search your home, and if they do, all the evidence will be thrown out. So how do we outsmart cops when they pull this warrant bluff on us? Number one, say, officer, get the warrant. I won't resist, but I don't consent, and I'm not letting you in the house until you show me the warrant. Number two, don't physically interfere, but don't cooperate with the officer either. And then number three, let the judge, not you, decide what was allowed, but by all means, don't help the police in their investigation. But what if instead of claiming to have a warrant, cops now pull you over for a ticky-tack traffic stop claiming you're a criminal? This brings us to the classic pretext traffic stop. Maybe the cop claims your license plate light was out. But the moment they mention your license plate is out, they start suddenly asking you about drugs or whether you have any guns in your vehicle. Watch out for this trick, because the Supreme Court ruled in 1996 in the case of Wren versus United States that police officers can pull you over for a minor traffic violation as a justification for the stop, even if they really wanted to investigate you for other matters. But a stop still has limits. Cops cannot hold you indefinitely. In fact, they can only hold you as long as is reasonably necessary, according to the Supreme Court, to write you the ticket for the minor traffic violation. So, how do we outsmart cops when they pull this traffic stop trick on us? Number one, provide your ID and your documents. Then, don't cooperate any further. Number two, always ask the officer, officer, am I free to leave? And then number three, never consent to searches or to play their game of just answering a few questions. And finally, watch out for the street stop shakedown. An officer walks up to you while you're walking down the street and says, hey, we need to talk for a second. It didn't sound like a question, it felt actually more like an order. But always remember, unless you're specifically detained, you're always free to go. The famous case of Terry versus Hayo said that cops can only detain you temporarily based upon reasonable suspicion that you've been involved in a crime. But just a hunch or a vague feeling that you've done something that they don't like, that makes it illegal. But if you don't stand up for your rights, cops will claim your willingness to stand there while they keep questioning you meant you consented to this consensual encounter, and now they'll keep asking you questions. So how do we stop the cops when they pull this street stop shakedown? Number one, you ask the officer, quote, am I being detained or am I free to go? If he says you're free to go, walk away. And then number two, if you're being detained, you immediately say, officer, I exercise my right to remain silent and I will not answer any further questions unless my attorney is present. And for a final bonus tip, to show you one of the tricks cops love to use, I almost forgot the voluntary surrender setup. This one feels like you're in control, but in reality, you're surrendering control. Cops promise you, hey man, no, you're not under arrest. We just want you to come down to the station to clear a few things up. In 2001, a California teacher voluntarily walked into the police station to clear things up. By the time the teacher made it into the station, they ended up being pelted with questions for hours under interrogation. That conversation became the foundation that investigators used to later file charges against him. So never forget, when cops claim they just want to have a voluntary conversation, it doesn't mean it's harmless. It just means you walked into the trap all by yourself. So how do we outsmart the cops when they pull this trick on us? Number one, never go into a police station without a lawyer standing right by your side. And number two, if you don't have an attorney, you tell the officer, I exercise my right to remain silent and will only speak to you if I have my lawyer present. The worst thing you could possibly do is walk into a police station and surrender your rights and end up being in a coercive situation where investigators are now in control of everything that happens. This is one of the best ways that officers are able to obtain false confessions from people that were completely innocent. And as a final thought here, exercising your rights is never being rude or being uncooperative with the police. It's actually necessary, and it's the only way to protect yourself under the Constitution. So one last time, memorize these phrases and say them when cops show up. Number 1, I do not consent to any searches. Number 2, am I being detained or am I free to go? And number 3, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and I demand my right to an attorney. Now, we just covered the exact words you can say to outsmart the police if they try to trick you. But did you know that there are legal myths that most people still believe that could completely destroy them if officers are investigating you? Check out this next video where I break down 5 legal myths cops hope you still believe. See you over there.